So welcome everyone to this, I guess, inaugural Grow, Eat, Learn webinar. It's our first one. We're having a series. This is part 1 of 2, and we're having another one in 2 weeks on food forests. So my name is Jess, and my pronouns are she, her. I work with Nourish Nova Scotia, and I'm the school community garden project lead. So I run the program Grow, Eat, Learn, through which this resource and this webinar is being hosted. So on behalf of Nourish Nova Scotia, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on school garden clubs. Nourish Nova Scotia is a registered charitable organization focused on the nourishment of children and youth in our province. So we carry out our mission through programs, advocacy, and partnerships. And one of our goals is to showcase successful programs that are doing great work around the province. So we're excited that for the next hour, we're going to be showcasing the work happening at a couple schools in HRCE, a few garden programs run by Schools Plus workers, Emily Hammond and Eric Garb. So thank you, Emily and Eric, for joining us today. Before we get rolling, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional and contemporary unceded and unsurrendered land of the Mi'kmaq people. We are bound to treaty obligations and to respect the peace and friendship treaties of 1752. So I'm coming in from Sabagadagity First Nation, from Halifax to Tuktuk, and I know others are coming in from different parts of the province. So if you are comfortable putting, I'd love to hear where you're from and where you're joining from today, what land you're on. There are a lot of, we do garden programming for youth, and so it's basically land-based work. So there are so many opportunities in garden programming and land-based work to integrate Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous justice into the work. So there are examples out there of high schools with Indigenous populations with Mi'kmaq students who are planting medicine gardens. There are examples of Mi'kmaq Kinamatnaway schools having relationships with public schools and doing plant exchanges. So I encourage you in your garden programming to think about how you might support Indigenous sovereignty on this land and how you might support the Mi'kmaq people. Sometimes that can also be through understanding what plants are native to here and through being conscious of what you plant. And we're going to go into a little bit more about how stewardship can be a part of gardening practice. So I am from Nourish Nova Scotia, as I mentioned, and I just want to briefly talk about what we do and our intended impact. So we have these 3 priorities that emerged from our strategic planning last year. The first is that we want to support youth food leaders who are able to activate change. The second is that we want to focus on creating welcoming and inclusive spaces that allow us to connect with each other through food. And the fourth is that we are working towards the advancement of equity and sustainability within our food system. So part of the way that we accomplish those goals, which are huge goals, responding to like actual crises in our communities, which I'm sure you're aware of. So we do that through different program areas of work. So we have Farm to School Snack, Grow, Eat, Learn, youth food leaders, and then we work on school food. We work closely with the province. We had a lot of advocacy power that led to the creation of the school food initiative, which is now a year old in Nova Scotia, and we continue to do that work, working closely with the Nova Scotia government. And so Grow, Eat, Learn is the program that covers growing skills, plant skills for youth. And so we consider that a part of food literacy work. It's just a different area of the food literacy work that Nourish does. So the kinds of things that we specialize in, these are the 3 areas of focus within Grow, Eat, Learn. So we focus on resource creation and facilitation. And so today we're actually launching a new resource, which is a document that's meant to go with this webinar that will help you hopefully start a school garden club. So we've worked with Eric Garb to create this tool and to hopefully be able to build capacity across the province for youth to engage in garden spaces. We promote network building and knowledge sharing. So that's actually, you are a part of this network now and you are engaging in one of our knowledge sharing spaces. So thank you for being a part of that and for being interested. This recording will be available on our YouTube channel, so you can always share it with others. And those who signed up, of which there were like 45 people who signed up, will be able to watch it after it's done and recorded and uploaded. And our third area of focus is capacity building across Nova Scotia. So we distribute grants. We try and do our best to, through mentorship and through grants and resource creation, actually work to build capacity within the system so that the impact of our work does actually mean more gardens. So one of the ways that we do that is that the Department of Education grants us money that we give out as garden grants, and we will have a garden grant program launching in the next week. So stay tuned for that. If you want to join our contact list, I will, maybe Leah or I will put an intake form in the chat so that you can join and you can be notified when that grant program is up. So just to get a little more specific, that was all really broad. We focus on gardening, obviously, and one of the things that is important to us, and that's in part because of funding agreements and our understanding that like gardening is an amazing way that youth and students can get engaged in participating in climate action. That's because in part, like working in the garden means you get to understand climate science. You get to understand better like how weather impacts the land, how weather impacts growing, what plants are present impact what animals are around, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of climate knowledge that comes through gardening, but there's also a lot of space for there to be kind of energizing and hope building climate action that just allows students and youth to engage in land stewardship practices. So actually like having access to land that they are helping to shape through planting, either it's flowers or they're planting vegetables, they're helping to feed their communities, they're building skills around food sovereignty and food security, which is totally important. And if there's composting, I know, for example, Eric has a worm situation going in his classroom now or in his learning space. And so he's practicing with his students soil stewardship, but also waste reduction and circular systems. So these are principles that we try and build into all of our resources, and we try to highlight them so that, you know, if you're activating this activity or if you're doing this and this, that you're actually participating in helping students to build skills around soil stewardship, water stewardship, food security and sovereignty, etc. Yeah. Oh, that's it for this part, actually. Okay. So thank you for listening to that intro session. Before we get started with Emily and Eric doing their presentations, we're going to have a Q&A after they share about their school garden programs. And if you have questions that come up when you are listening to them talk, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will address them afterwards. We've got a few questions that came through the registration forms that I have written down. But yeah, there's going to be a Q&A. So think about, if you're thinking about how you might run something like this in your environment, in your school system, like, yeah, come up with a question that might help, where these experts might be able to help you some direction. Yeah, so all that being said, I would love to now introduce Emily Hammond, who's someone I had the pleasure of working with. Well, I started working with Emily like 2 weeks into this job when I was terrified of being around children. I'm less scared now, and Emily is definitely not afraid of working with children. She excels working with students and youth. Emily is a highly engaged community outreach worker with Schools Plus. She's currently studying her Master's of Social Work. And is the first, she's currently studying her Master's of Social Work. And this garden club that she runs at Harborview Elementary is not her first garden club. When she first started working with Excel, she was the first person to start a garden club and get funding for garden clubs. So this is something that she really integrates into all of her work. Emily loves her job and is a houseplant enthusiast and loves the process and community rather than the plants themselves when it comes to the garden. So for Emily, being around kids who get to start something foundational and build it all the way to harvest and eating is an amazing reward for getting students in the garden. So Emily, I'm going to hand it over to you as soon as I get this presentation cleared. All right. take it away as long as it looks good on your end.
Yeah, it does. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so thanks for introducing me. My name is Emily. I am in the process of losing my voice, so don't mind that. But I'm a community outreach worker with Schools Plus. It's my third year in this job, and I work in the Dartmouth North community. So you can just go to the next slide. Oh, and yeah, so I'm going to talk about my garden at Harborview, but I have gardens at both my schools. So the reason that I picked gardening is just because I do love the sense of community that it tends to bring into programming. So when I first started working at Harborview, behind it we have well, it's not abandoned anymore, but there was abandoned like street hockey rink as well as a tennis court that got reestablished into being a gigantic community garden. So we have like a huge greenhouse, and it is run by a community organization. So one day I needed water for like a field day, and they happened to be watering the garden, and I just kind of went over and I was like, "Hi, my name's Emily," and that was kind of where it all started in bringing the garden back into the school community. Just because following COVID, there was a lot of restrictions, and that relationship kind of got hindered with staff turnover and things like that. So as a community outreach worker, partnering with community organizations is a super important part of my job role. So a partnership with Take Action Society, which is the people who run the garden in the back of Harborview. It was the start of something beautiful that has spread throughout the community. And as just mentioned, a huge thing that I really love about gardening isn't so much like if anything actually ever grows. It's more the pride in like seeing kids create anything. So my first ever garden we built from scratch. My dad actually came in and let students create the garden. So like we bought the wood, we cut it at home, we brought it in, and the kids assembled it. So just taking the pride in like, hey, we built this thing from the ground up, things like that. I do a lot of projects within my garden of like preventative measures. So little kids will paint strawberry rocks to help deter birds. So we put them out really, really early in the year to deter birds from actually pecking at the strawberries later. Does it actually work? I have no idea, but the kids love it. It's fun. At the end of the season, they get to go back and like collect the rocks, and they have a big sense of pride in it. And we just like to cook or use ingredients to make really fun stuff. And the kids really enjoy that aspect of it as well. So next slide. So at Harborview, everything that we grow in our garden is edible. So I would say where my school is located, it is definitely a lower socioeconomic neighborhood. So we try to grow a lot of stuff that is a lot more common. Some of the stuff that can be grown in vegetable gardens wouldn't be a huge uptake with our demographics. So things like kale is not something that we would grow at Harborview, just because most of it would go to waste, especially with the amount of space that we have. So peppers is probably our biggest thing, and tomatoes. We also grow a lot of lettuce. And this year we're actually going to start a potato patch, which is going to add like a carb aspect to it, which is going to be really good because potatoes are so versatile. Yeah, next slide. So for my garden club, I like to try to kind of keep it interesting, and then also include the students whenever possible. So something that we always do is water. We take turns on like who waters. My garden club over the 3 years that I've been there has grown exponentially. So this season, I think I'm actually going to have two. I'm going to have to offer one at lunchtime for one group of kids, and then an after school one. When I first started out, I think it was like 5 kids. Now I have kids coming to my room every single day asking when it's going to start again or asking to join. So watering is something that we always do. The greenhouse gets really, really hot. And so because I do work in the summer, we have a summer garden crew as well. So we take turns on who does the watering because it's not the most fun thing to do out there. Pruning and fertilizing is a big one as well. Kids usually love that one. Harvesting, we do a lot of like making our own seeds. So out of like our waste, we'll take seeds out of the vegetables to reuse for the next planting season, just to kind of save on costs. And another thing that our kids helped with this year was like winterizing the garden, which was like, I would say one of the best days we've ever had at the garden, because it was basically kids destroying stuff and they absolutely loved it. So being able to implement activities that are like really, really hands-on, I find work better, just in keeping kids engaged in what you're doing. So kids love to destroy stuff. And so offering them a safe space to be able to do that seems to grow some interest. Next slide. A huge thing that I've done in our garden is engaging community. So the garden has been there, but in the past couple of years, it definitely, the community involvement has decreased a little bit, again, because of COVID. So creating your garden to be a area for community is really, really helpful. So I'm lucky enough that at my garden, because it is so huge, we actually do have a stage area. So we do an event called Bedtime Stories. It started way pre-COVID. COVID happened. It never kind of started up again. The people who run the garden were like, I would love if you could start it up again. So I did it 2 summers in a row. What we do is we basically try to get some guest speaker into the garden to read stories. Kids come out with their families. We do it in the summer just because it's warm. We provide snacks, giveaway prizes for the kids, and then typically we'll give people a tour around the garden if they want to, show them vegetables, let some people take some stuff home. This summer we did it twice. The first one wasn't as big of a success as the second one was. I think the second one, including parents, we had like over 150 people. So having that sense of community of like bringing people into the space has been really, really great. Because then I have had instances since where families have reached out to me like during the growing season and been like, hey, like I'm really short on food, or like I don't have the money this pay. Is there any way that you can help out? So engaging community has been really good in enhancing our garden programming and including parents in kind of the skill developing aspect of it and the food literacy aspect of it, can really increase capacity at home as well. Next slide. These are just some pictures of like some random stuff that we've done. We have made salsa multiple times. We did some canning. There is a picture of some students like walking through the garden during like prime time of like when all the plants are kind of closing over you. You can barely get through the greenhouse. Probably the most amazing thing that I have seen through my 3 years is kids that thrive in the garden are typically the kids that don't thrive in a classroom. So a lot of the children that come to my garden programmings are those children that maybe in a classroom are higher behavior or have higher struggles, or maybe literacy isn't their top thing. And a lot of the kids that are thriving out there are like totally different children when they're out there. So just the behavior aspect of it, I find significantly decreases when we're out there, because it's so hands-on, because it's so involved with the children. I don't know. I just have found a different side of children within the program. So I always make sure to try to invite some of those kids that maybe haven't found like their calling within the school setting or feel like they don't belong anywhere, and creating a safe space in our garden for kind of anyone who wants to be there. And I think that's all I have for me. I think that's my last slide.
Awesome. I wanted to throw out there too that another thing that the greenhouse has is the herb alley that Rosanna plants. So this greenhouse has, yeah, it's got these like 50-foot beds that are huge, and the one of the whole long beds is devoted to different herbs. And last year, Rosanna planted about 16 different herbs. Some of them are perennial, some of them are planted annual. And we had an amazing time doing a dips and spreads workshop, which Nourish facilitated, and everybody got to like custom harvest their dream herb blend. And basically, we made a simple Greek yogurt and lemon juice, and then herb dressing, and then we had like a little competition, or like there was definitely like some competitive vibes about whose dip was the best. And we had like these little paper cups and Sharpies, so we were able to write the names of the herbs on each one, on each cup, so the kids could remember. And it was a really amazing way to get youth like engaged in flavor and like really experimenting with different flavors, because there was like pineapple sage and regular sage and parsley and different mints. And yeah, and it's a
Yeah, even the salsa became a little bit competitive as well, of like who had the best salsa. competition's always good. It tends to engage people. And then another thing that we're going to do this year as well is we're actually going to expand and include our English as an additional language teacher. She also loves gardening, and she is going to get herb and other vegetables suggestions from students so that we can incorporate different cultures into our garden as well. So we're hoping to have kind of an around the world section of the greenhouse this year, where our students will be able to have pride in, bringing a little taste of home to here.
Thank you so much, Emily. We will hear more from you after. So next I'd like to introduce Eric Garf, who is the author. We haven't debuted this resource yet, which is the companion to this webinar, but it is waiting in the wings to be dropped in the chat. But Eric quite masterfully crafted this document based on his own experience starting a garden club with mostly indoor gardening. So obviously the Take Action Garden is a pretty unique setting where there's a lot of infrastructure that most schools don't have. So this is an example of a different, Eric's going to present an example of a different kind of garden club where there's a lot less infrastructure. But Eric has just completed, congratulations, a Master's of Education in Sustainability, Creativity, and Innovation. And also with Schools Plus, Eric is a child and youth care practitioner focused on hydroponic growing. So Eric's favorite plant to grow is a hot pepper, despite never ever eating them. And I am going to let Eric now take it away.
Thank you, Jess. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric. Great job, Emily. That was fantastic. Emily's a really key player of our Schools Plus team, and she can really get any programming going with any group of students. And the work she's done with the gardening at her school, Harborview, has been great. Now, I'm moving on to talk about my school, Admiral Westfall Elementary. It's a very different situation, a different experience here. So I'll kind of give you some context about that. And because of my context, because of what we're doing here, you might be able to do it at your school. You might not be able to do it at your school, depending on what your environment looks like. And I did not take any pictures of our outdoor space because it does not look as nice as Emily's location at Harborview. We are in the midst of trying to build an outdoor space because it is really limiting. Our outdoor space is mostly paved. And when I first got here at this school, there was one neglected garden bed. And I'm sure a lot of people, if you do work in schools, can relate to a neglected garden bed on your school property. There are so many initiatives to get a garden started, and then these gardens become forgotten about, underused. And I've talked to teachers and they've said, if it's not out in front of you, if it's not there, it's hard to get your curriculum outside and get out into the dirt and do things. So there's other ways we can get students involved, and that's what Emily and I are here to talk about. So Admiral Westfall has a population of only 108 students, so it's very easy for me to get students involved in things and keep our recruitment up because there's only a few students. But in a situation where you have 300 students or more at your school, it can become more of a challenge. So at first, I'll talk about growing with a purpose. So I believe that schools are a community space where we can come together and dismantle some of these barriers that we face in gardening. At the school, in the school community here, we have a large population of students who do not have access to land or property outside of their home dwelling. So there's more apartment style living, and growing outside is something that they don't have access to at home. So in urban settings like this in Dartmouth, we want to be able to provide a space for students to garden, so whether that's outside at your school, or we can teach them ways that they can garden inside and engage in this practice at home. So a lot of the work that I do is inside in the classroom. And we've been doing it all year. So we have these little hydroponic systems that have been really handy. I'm not sure if my camera is visible, but here's one of the devices that we use. We were lucky enough to get a grant from Nourish to be able to purchase some of these devices. And I put one in every single class, and each class chose what they wanted to grow. Um, and it's a great way to engage in growing and the early stages of a plant's life cycle within the classroom and not having to get outside. So yeah, you can see a picture here of some growing indoors. We have a lot of little greenhouse things set up and some bucket growing and things like that. So once it's grown in the hydroponic device, you can take it out, put it into a soil or a pot. And this all relies on having space. So you might not have space in your school. I know schools are just bursting at the seams, and it's hard to find room to do this. But if you can, it can be a great way to engage with some growing inside. We'll move on to the next slide here. So I've sort of broke down my theory of this into 3 stages, and that's what I put into the guide that you'll see later. But the first stage is preparation, and it can be the hardest. Getting started can be really tough and could be the most difficult part of your journey because there's so much work that goes into the preparation. Where are we going to garden? How are we going to get the money? Who am I going to work with? Do we have all the materials we need? Where are we going to get those materials? And I think overall, what you really need to do is know your school well and to do an analysis of what your school needs. Does your school have outdoor space? Do you want to do outdoor growing? Or do you live in a community that outdoor growing is not that accessible? And how can we get into some indoor activities and gardening? Jess mentioned my worm situation. Just so everyone knows, I'm very healthy. I don't have any worm problems myself, but I do have a situation where I'm growing worms in a bucket. We have 200 worms growing in just a bucket, just like this. It's a really fun activity that we did with the youth. Now, I did scare a few students off. They did not want to play with the worms and learn about their life and growth cycle and what they're up to. But the ones who were brave enough to learn about it, they were happy to learn how they provide nutrients for our soil and help with the plant's growth cycle. We'll go on to the next slide here. So the way I do my garden club is during the school day, I collaborate with school staff at our school to bring this together. And I really encourage you to bring it to your team and make your garden club dreams come true. Some of the key collaborators I work with would be the librarian, who is always helpful at bringing in new literature for me, either to read to my garden club or for me to read and use some of the activities. Just today, my librarian ordered this book for me and gave it to me. So just reviewing that one. This is from an author in Ontario. We try to keep it in Canada, the literature that she's bringing in, but collaborating with librarians, great. Learning center team is amazing to collaborate with. This device that I just showed you, the hydroponics, is from the learning center, and they use it a little differently than the rest of the classes, which I'll explain later. Halifax Regional Arts is a fantastic collaborator on any garden project, whether it's bringing in that creativity and personalizing your garden space. We just finished an activity with Lynn Coolin, our Halifax Regional Arts Specialist here at Arma Westfall, where we designed our own apron. You'll see some pictures of that later. That's our club uniform. And I also collaborate with our school counselor, who is able to enrich our programming with some social emotional learning and helping us identify students that would benefit from our club and programming. So yeah, I really encourage you to reach out to people in your school, and you don't have to do this alone. There's people out there that might have a passion for gardening or who you might want to bring onto your team. They might not even have a passion for it, but just an interest, and are happy to help you get going. Everyone's very busy in the school, but I'm sure you can find 1 or 2 people who can support you. We can go on to the next slide. We're going to talk about understanding your community. I talked a little bit about it, like trying to assess what people need, what are the barriers you're going to face, who are some collaborators you can work with in the document that you'll see later of the Garden Club guide. I put in a SWOT analysis, which is SWOT, which is trying to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a great way to sort of bring together all your ideas into one spot and figure out what are our strengths going to be here. What are some fun opportunities? What are some weaknesses that we need to address and some threats that we may come across? I definitely came across a few, and I know some questions we always have is about vandalism and property destruction if we're doing things outside. That will always happen, and we kind of just have to live with that reality. It is a community space. We are sharing it with the community, and people will engage with our garden in ways that we might not deem appropriate. But it's really out of our control. And I mean, our garden that we're building, where we know is right near a spot where the students love to play soccer, that we know that soccer ball is going to be going into the garden, but you know, it's just going to be the reality of our school space. If you do have any like questions about that kind of stuff, you can throw them into the chat and we can discuss them later at the end. I know summer maintenance is one thing that a lot of people are concerned about, and definitely is an issue. I also identify like March break and the winter break areas that can be difficult. And I do have a solution for that, which I will talk about in the next few slides. We'll move on to the next slide here. The picture there you're seeing of some plants that were potted, and you see them here in this grow tent. These were plants we grew in our hydroponics, and what we did is we potted them and brought them to a craft sale. So we added some entrepreneurship to our club, and the students sold their plants to the community. It was a fantastic way of taking our growing learning into another step. So it's a good way to end right before the winter break. This was a holiday craft market that we went to, and we sold these plants that the students grew. Students did it all on their own. They made $155 cash, and they used that to put towards their club. So my club has 9 students in it right now that are passionate growers. And then they're all from one class, nine students from one class. And we have a few other students from some other classes that also engage in that too. Altogether, I probably have about 15 to 20 students who are garden club leaders, and they all do different activities with me throughout the school. This may look like creating that worm farm, growing some plants in the hydroponics, or doing presentations in class. So I do take my older grade 6 students with me into some of the younger grades, and we present what we've been working on. And it's a great way for some peer mentorship and peer learning, where the older students get a chance to show off all the hard work that they're getting up to, and they really do retain a lot of the information that they learn from gardening, and they're able to tell other people about it. It's also a great way to maintain your recruitment in your club. So if your older students, grade 6, are going into primary to present, the primary students are then seeing the passion from their role models and wanting to get involved later when they grow through the education system. So presenting in the classes, doing entrepreneur fairs where you're selling your product is a great way to do some indoor stuff. Again, Jess said a lot of my work is not outside in the garden, so I'm really trying to adapt for my school setting. If I had a big garden plot and a greenhouse, I'd be doing a lot of different things, but I'm really trying to focus on how I can engage youth in the schools and keep them interested in gardening in a space where these students don't garden. We'll move on to the next slide here about engagement strategies. You really should implement as many as you can. I mentioned a few, but reward programs are one. Keeping your garden upkeep, where you get students to water the hydroponics, is a great way to have students take a break from class, go do a little task for the garden, and take care of their plants. Sometimes students will name their plants or name their hydroponics, and it's a lovely way to keep students engaged. We'll move on to the next slide. As I told you, I'm doing a lot of indoor stuff. You can see here, this is the product that I use, IDEO, and it's really simple. I put one in every classroom, and I didn't let, like, the teachers were were overwhelmed at first. Like, do I have to do this? And I said, it's really simple. You just pour in some nutrients, and you fill it with water and it will grow. So I'll just move on to my last slides here. I know I'm I'm going over a little, but
One more
it's
minute.
exciting.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
It's social and emotional learning is really important. You can do a lot of gardening together to build relationships, and students can have some social capital by inviting their friends to garden with them. But when we were younger, when we got into gardening, it was our grandparents who we were out in the garden with and gardening, and a lot of that experience some students don't get to have. So you can build relationship through this, and it's a great way to just have chats. And I have one more slide, just about how it needs to be a student-led approach and letting your students take the lead on all the work you do in gardening. I'm really hands off on talking about science and a lot of that education work because I'm child and youth care. I just focus on enriching the students' well-being by giving them opportunities like this. So you can see our little outfits that we have there of our uniforms, of our aprons, and all of our plants there on display. Um, it's if you can keep the students engaged and making it feel like it's their own, they'll keep coming back. Like Emily said, students keep coming. When are we going to start garden club, please? Thank you so much, and look forward to hearing some of your questions if you have some. Thank you, Jess and the Nourish team, for putting this together.
Thank you so much. I love hearing about these projects and getting to see them in real life and see the impact that they have. So I'm going to, oh my gosh. If now is the time when anybody can ask questions. I haven't been monitoring the chat, so I don't know if there are any questions in the chat or not. I have some ready if you need a few moments, but I would encourage, I'm curious who is in this group and if you are Schools Plus workers or if you are teachers. A question that I had, because you're both elementary level, what would it look like? What do you think modifications or how do you think the effectiveness of this program would differ if it happened at a high school level? Yeah.
I can go first, Eric, if you want.
Thanks, Emily. I'm still catching up.
For me, in terms of high school, I think that offering the program throughout the day would be a good step just where there's so many free blocks. Students are constantly like going in and out of the building. A lot of times just need a safe place to go. So maybe not having such of like a rigid, program. Maybe the garden is open every, I don't know, Tuesday and Thursday and A block and D block or whatever. Every day of the week you have it open for one of like the blocks, and it being more of a fluid kind of program would probably work better in that setting. I just know that in the high school level, like lunch bell rings, kids are gone. After school bell ring, kids are gone. And a lot more of like the hands-on building aspect of it could be really good. So if you don't have a garden space at your school already, it's a great opportunity for like tech ed students to create something, like O2 students, trying to think like what all, there's all kinds of programs in high school that could be included. The entrepreneurship side of things could be like a leadership project. Anything of those, I feel like it could fit into a lot of different curriculums at the high school level. But yeah, that's kind of where my brain went.
I know, speaking to junior high staff, that for their garden clubs, just having a safe space for students is what they're looking for. They a place to hang out, be with some friends, maybe do a bit of gardening, but some staff have said they just come for snacks and they don't really do much gardening. And maybe a few of them do gardening, but most of them are just hanging around with some friends to try to have a nice spot. And building that cultural environment, that community is a big part of it. So I think that's fine. And I think that's what high school students might look for more sometimes. But if you can find the green thumbs, the keeners that are really interested in it, you could really do some great stuff and give some students some independence at home, send them home with some gardening. stuff, like give them a hydroponics device to rent to take home, or give them some plants to grow and have it a competition who can grow the most plants.
Now, I did a youth engagement session last week with an agriculture 11 class, and actually the one thing that I remember and noted was the students really were like, well, we want to be able to take this stuff home and do it at home. And that another thing they mentioned that it's something that had happened was an outcome of the course is that they actually are a lot better at taking care of plants at home because of the education they were getting in the agriculture 11, but they wanted to be able to do more at home. All right. Any questions? Okay, there's something in the chat. From Daniel Blaze. Do you ever harvest the produce? Do you connect with any outside organizations like community gardens or local businesses or parents and grandparents? Also, do you name the worms? Question. So yeah, maybe I don't know if you want to start with worms and then get into the juice of the question, or
Yeah, I definitely want to start with worms, Jess. Worms is really what I want to talk about today. We have 200 worms. We have 108 kids in the school, so each one's named after one kid, and then we had to come up with a bunch of other names for those other worms. The kids actually wanted to take the worms home too. Like, can I take this one home? I'm like, no, they're a community organization. They want to stick together. Yeah, yeah. Uh, I'm trying to think what else besides worms in that question was there.
what happens to the produce?
Oh, the produce, yeah.
Harvested, do you
So
connect with outside organizations or parents?
we actually feed the worms some of the food that we grow, so some of the greens. We did some cooking activities to bring in some food literacy. We cooked some cilantro rice with some of the herbs, but the students did not like it. They did not like the cilantro flavor, but it's fun to show them how you can cook with some of the things you grow. We don't grow enough here for big meals or anyone to take things home or really to donate anything. It's more just for the activity of growing. So when we did harvest, when our plants were about to produce food, we ended up doing our entrepreneur fair to sell them. So to try to avoid the step of having to take care of that, we handed them off to people that engage with that at home.
Yeah, and for me, like we do harvest all the produce that we grow. Take Action used to do a program. It was called, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking. Something to doorstep, and they would actually go door to door with the bags of produce and just see if people wanted it. With the community that I work in, where there is really high food insecurity, I do try to be very mindful of who I invite. So a lot of the children that I invite are families that I've worked with previously that do struggle with food insecurity. Healthy food isn't always the easiest to get on the table in terms of price. Luckily, where I am, we do have mobile food market as well. So that has created a bit of an ease. But just being mindful of who I invite, or being very, I guess, targeted, but also open at the same sense. Like if a kid comes up to me and it's like, oh, I want a garden. And I know that, their situation at home, they might have a lot of food, I would never not invite them. I just always make sure that I extend the hand to some of those kiddos that I really do know that would benefit. We, every day of gardening club, when there's food in the garden, we send kids home with a paper bag full of stuff, whether that be peppers, beans. We don't make them take stuff they're not going to eat. Obviously, if like they're like, oh no one in my house likes cucumbers, we won't send them with a cucumber. But this summer we invited a kid who we invited him because he would like the hands-on experience of it. When his dad came to pick him up one day, we were eating vegetables like at the end, because we would just have food from the garden at snack time in our summer programs. His dad came to pick him up and was like, is he eating a vegetable? And the kid had actually never ate vegetables in his life, or like with dip. So like we had bought ranch, and like kids just tried stuff. And so the dad went home with a huge bag of vegetables and was like, I didn't even know my son liked vegetables. So things like that have been really great, and just kind of helping to bridge some of the gaps, and help people with food insecurity in whatever way we can. Where my garden is so big, we do produce a lot of food, but nothing goes to waste. Anything that like falls off a plant and starts to decompose, we pick the seeds out of, so that we can regrow it. yeah, it's a very full ecosystem.
Thank you. So I think it would be nice to touch on the summer maintenance piece, just because I know that comes up for so many educators and is a big issue for school gardens. And you folks work through the summer, but I'm curious about what you would say about summer maintenance. Thank you, Catherine. Check out the resource for the Starting a School Garden Club, which will be on our website. It is now. Go ahead, sorry.
Do you want to go first, Eric?
Sure. Our garden club is still continuing through the summer because with Schools Plus, we still work through the summer. So we're meeting every Wednesday to take care of our gardens. So we have a few garden projects in our woodlawn team circuit. So every Wednesday we'll be going around as a group to water these gardens, tend to them. So all the work really of setting them up is going to be done in the school year, and then it'll just be a small team upkeeping them once a week. We also had to try to reach out to just other community members, like who lives in this neighborhood that might be able to water. We're going to put two rainwater jugs outside, get the fire department down the road to fill them up, and get some people to come through and water them. So we'll give them some watering cans and be like, if you can come through and water this garden once in a while, that'd be great. We'll see how it turns out. If it survives, it survives. If not, it's okay. Hand it back to the community really in the summer.
So I actually have two different experiences in terms of like summer maintenance. So the Harborview Garden obviously has to be watered on a really consistent basis, especially the greenhouse. We actually don't have a watering system at all. We hook up a hose to the school and use the school water. That being said, a big thing that we have done is partnering with other community organizations. So partnering with the leadership program from HRM Rec, they would come down once a week and water. I took one day a week to water with like our garden program. And then also like any boys and girls clubs nearby, any summer camps really that are nearby is always a good place to collaborate with over the summer. You know, they're always looking for stuff to do. And if there is a way for them to, you know, get it done, like if you don't need school access, or like in my case, our garden is locked. But you know, if it is just a community garden, like having that, with the first garden I created, which was on school property for summer maintenance, we actually reached out to our PTA and SAC, so you know, home and school community groups, things like that, and we created a sign up sheet and just had a schedule. You know, you can have your principal send it out on like school messenger or in their newsletter to see if anyone would be interested in, you know, signing up for a week that they are kind of in charge of the garden type thing, and that seemed to work as well.
Awesome. Thank you for those tips. Yeah, thank you again for being here. So this webinar, as I mentioned, is meant to accompany and is the sort of launch event for our new guide to starting a school garden club, sorry, created by Eric in partnership with myself and the Grow Eat Learn team. So we are just going to talk about that briefly before we wrap up. We will be out of here at 4:30, I promise you. I'm just going to share screen one more time. Not as last time. I wanted to just feature our new learning hub, which is basically a big online database of all Nourish resources. So we have a provincial mandate, which means we create tools. Part of what we do is create tools that are accessible across the province and create programs that can be replicated. So we have many programs, as we talked about earlier. This is the Grow Eat Learn page. If you go to this page, you can see the resources that we have that are all connected to gardening. There are other pages that have cooking skills, food safety skills, school food resources. So I really encourage you to explore our learning hub. It's only been out for 2 weeks. You can search for facilitation guides. You can search for activities. It's meant to be a really interactive and user-friendly way to see what we have to offer. And so that link will be in the chat. And then now a part of that database is the guide to starting a school garden club, which was just added today. And so Eric, you've got like 3 minutes, just to maybe like talk briefly. We put the table of contents up here. A lot of what you said in the presentation kind of mirrors the document.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, I tried to present on what I put into the document, but really I tried to break it down into 3 steps where it's your preparation phase where you're working through getting prepared, implementation where you're implementing your activities and your programming, and then some work on continuation, how you're going to sustain your garden club. We broke it down into your your pre-garden club, your during your garden club, and your post-garden club eras. Um, what you'll see in the document is it's not a program packet. It doesn't have a lot of like activities for you to do. There are a few engagement strategies and things like that, but Nourish will have more of that sort of activity work that you can get from them or from other resources that you can find like through your library. Um, I talk about communication and collaboration, how I said in my presentation about who you should connect with. I outlined some key players there and how they can help you in the school system. I explain what a SWOT analysis is and how you can do an analysis of your school and what your garden club may face as threats or successes. I talk about recruitment and how different ways you can get people to join your club and how you can poster or do presentations in classes, all based on what your school environment needs, and if whether you're doing it as a lunch club or you're doing it after school or it's part of built into the school routine somehow. Um, Collaborating is another part of that. You want to talk to the teachers and see, can I come in and do a presentation? Can some students come out and work on some things? Once we get into the implementation stuff, I talk about how reward programs are really great for a garden activity. So with these hydroponic devices, if a student needs a break from class or earns a break, that break could be, let's go down and water the hydroponics. Let's go check on how the growth is on that on those hot pepper plants we're growing. You can keep a journal of that and a log. You can also have a schedule for students to do some upkeep and things like that. So there's some tips for how you can be successful. There's some explanations of what some aspects of your club could do and what it could benefit from. And there is a part about plant sales, about how we ran our plant sale. And then a big part that I'm passionate about is the social and emotional learning. There's a big well-being in the garden spot there too, and some different methods of gardening, including outdoors, indoors. And to my last note, I would say above being it student-led, you also want to make a succession plan. So if you create this garden club and you work really hard to set it up and do some fun stuff, make sure that you document everything you do, and so that when you leave or if you move on to another school, that garden club can continue, and that we don't get more neglected garden plots across HRM or across Nova Scotia. Print off this document, file it with the work you do, and leave it for the next person who's going to take over your garden club. And I wish you all good luck with it and have fun with it, and don't take it too seriously. Just enjoy it and use this guide if it's helpful for you. I hope it is. And the Nourish team put a lot of work into making it look beautiful. So thank you, Nourish, for making that garden resource.
Thank you. I was really, the day you were like, I'd like to make a guide to start a new school garden club, I was like, I'm really glad I met you. So thank you so much for putting your wisdom and experience into that format. So just to wrap up, we have this is a 2-part series, a spring webinar series. We're going to have another probably webinar series in the winter on different topics, but coming up in 2 weeks from today is the Youth Food Forest workshop or webinar, where we hear from 2 folks who started food forests. One, the photo that's here, is at the Blue Nose Academy in Lunenburg. It's hard to see from this photo, but this is a bus loop. So this was a circle of grass that the school has, that and outside community members, actually not the school, have overhauled and turned into this perennial forest, perennial food garden. So a food forest is another way of saying a perennial food garden. So there are trees, there are shrubs, there are herbs, there are a lot of different elements to creating this ecosystem. But a main feature being that it's perennial. So it's different than running a vegetable garden that needs upkeep. And so over time, this can be something that needs care every year, but needs different levels of care as time goes on, and in theory will be a bountiful resource for the school going forward. So Raina, who's in this call, will be one of the speakers. I've got a link, a registration link for you to sign up if you are interested in that. And I think, yeah, that's everything. We've got some good links in the chat for you to check out the Learning Hub and the resource. I'm going to just add this link to our event page. So if you're not already signed up for this webinar, please consider joining. Yeah, thank you again, Eric, and thank you, Emily, for doing the awesome work that you do and being willing to share it with others. Thank you all for making the time to come here at the end of, maybe it was a PD day, could have done this a little earlier, but we didn't. But so thanks for coming at the end of your day. Yeah, please fill out that intake form and join our contact list or reach out. The Grow Eat Learn emails on our page. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you again and follow you on your journey as well. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.